Hi there, it's Alexandra from the Middlesized Garden YouTube channel and blog, and it's the Midwinter Garden Tips. Midwinter, for here in the UK, or if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, is late January, early February, and obviously if you're in the Southern Hemisphere it's late June, early July, and that's because it's a few weeks after the shortest day, and it's when our ground is at its coldest and our weather is at its worst, and the garden is as grey and as brown as you can imagine. And there are some things that you can do in your garden to help it look gorgeous in the summer, but there's actually quite a few things that sometimes go on the to-do lists which I'd suggest you don't do. And I'm also looking at online garden talks so that you can scratch that gardening itch from the safety and comfort and warmth of your own home and hear experts from all over the world talking and ask them questions. If you're new here, the Middlesized Garden uploads videos every Saturday, so if you want to see them when you open up YouTube, click the subscribe button, it's completely free, and if you want YouTube to let you know when new videos are uploaded, then click the notifications bell. Here in southeast England, in Kent, we roughly equate to a USDA hardiness zone of 9, which means that our winters are not usually very severe. It's rare for us to go below -6°C, which is 21 Fahrenheit. And we don't often have prolonged amounts of snow or really bad weather, but sometimes we do. And some people are having some very bad bouts of weather this winter. A couple of years ago, I interviewed Lucy Adams, the head gardener at Doddington Place Gardens, and asked what we should do about winter-damaged shrubs, because sometimes you'll see that, it looks as if the shrub has virtually died. And what she said was very reassuring, which was basically just really hold back on doing anything for a while. Obviously clear away snow off the branches, cut away anything that's actually a broken branch, but otherwise just leave it. And then prune the shrub at the normal time for its pruning. Because if you try and tidy it up a bit earlier, it will try and grow a bit more. And then if another bout of bad weather comes along, then that'll really hit the new growth. When I interviewed Lucy, I saw some really damaged shrubs, and they're all absolutely fine now. You'll find a link to that video in the description below, and also to all the other resources and other YouTubers that I mention in this video. But before we get on to more tips, can I mention bad backs in gardening? Because if you're spending more time indoors, and I think we all are, and then suddenly there's a sunny day and you go out and you try and catch up in the garden, you are really quite likely to have a bad back. I've had rather a bad back over the last few weeks, and although it hasn't been linked to gardening, it did remind me that there is nothing quite like rushing around the garden, trying to get everything done in a short period of time because it's the only sunny day, to make your back or your knees really injured. I've done a video on how to prevent back pain in knees and backs in gardening, which I'll put in the description below. But the overall tip is just to do things in very short bouts. For example, don't go out and do an hour's weeding or an hour's digging. Do 15 minutes weeding or 15 minutes digging, and also make sure you warm up a bit first. You may have your own warming up exercises, or even just walk around the garden a few times, picking things up, checking what needs doing. And although it may seem irresistible to try and get ahead, really be careful, just no more than 15 minutes at a time. And actually, if your garden is quite small, even 5 minutes will help if you do it regularly. So what about jobs in the midwinter garden? Well, there's a couple of jobs I'd really warn you against, and one of them is sowing seeds. Now, when you buy seed packets, you will often see sow February to April or sow all year round. And of course, one of the things is that my January is not the same as your January. If you're in the north of Scotland or the south of Cornwall or the north of France, it is going to be quite different from here in Kent. And the other thing is that if you've got a greenhouse and grow lights and heated propagators, you probably can sow seeds at any time. But if you haven't, and I haven't, then I would really advise against sowing seeds in midwinter. It's something I've known for a long time, and I actually forgot myself this December. I got a packet of seeds, of Echium russicum in fact, and it said sow any time in the year. So I sowed it probably about 6 weeks ago, and as you can see, these seeds have barely germinated, and those that have germinated are struggling. So that's because it's not just about how warm it is, it's about the length of daylight. So just wait maybe 3 to 4 weeks, it depends on your own particular climate, before you start sowing seeds. And the other tip, which I also forgot when I was sowing these seeds, is don't sow the whole packet at once, because if you've actually chosen a time that appears, according to all the books, to be the right time to sow seeds, but it's not quite right for this particular climate or the weather, then you haven't got any fallback. And I sowed the whole packet of this Echium russicum, and it's quite clear that very little is going to come through. So when you're sowing, sow a bit later, particularly if the weather's bad, and always save some seed to sow in 2 weeks' time. And as I often say, gardeners learn by trial and error, which means that once you've done things a few times, you'll work out what's right for you in your garden. Another thing that people do get advised to do around this time of year is digging the borders to prepare them for the winter planting. But I personally am a no-dig, no-till gardener. And I've got a video about that, which I did with Charles Douentza, about no-dig, no-till for flower borders, which you'll see in the description below. But the basic premise is that you only dig a hole to plant a plant, or to take one out, or to take a weed out, and otherwise you lay a layer of garden compost or mulch on top of your earth once a year, either in spring or autumn, and you let the worms and the microorganisms dig it in, and that's better for the structure of the soil. So I did cover my beds with a garden compost or a mulch last autumn. If you haven't done it, I'd suggest doing it in a few weeks' time when the soil has warmed up a bit. But however, there is weeding, and certainly my winters are mild enough for weeds to keep growing, and it is really worth keeping on top of them. There's not much substitute for hand weeding at this time of year, because whatever you put on leaves, the leaves aren't really growing enough to draw the poison or the vinegar or whatever you're using down to the roots. So not much beats getting a trowel or a fork and just going out there and digging up the weeds. I've got a particularly persistent perennial weed called winter heliotrope, which really gets going in the winter. And this winter I'm having a campaign against it, and I just literally try to get out every day, even in the rain, just to spend 5 minutes just removing a few winter heliotrope. So, taking that there's not a huge amount we can do in the garden, how can we scratch that gardening itch? And one of the advantages of lockdown is that quite a few people and organisations have taken their garden talks online. So normally, while you'd have to travel to a garden club and hear someone who has themselves travelled to the garden club, some of those garden club type talks are online, and if they're live you can ask questions, and it has got some of the atmosphere of a real live session. I know we're all longing to get back to real live events, but if it's difficult for you to get out, or difficult for you to get out at night, or you want to see a really wide variety of experts, then actually online garden talks are a really great option. So I've asked a few people around the world to tell me which ones they recommend, because after all, we can all tune in to talks in the New York Botanic Garden, even if we live in England or France or Germany, and I think that's quite exciting. Here in Britain, head gardener Lou Nichols has started an online gardening club through Patreon called Adventures in Horticulture. And you pay £3 a month and you get a monthly talk plus a newsletter, and you can listen to past talks as well. And Lou very much runs it as if it was a garden club. So over to Lou to tell you what the experience is like.
So the talks usually take about an hour. So we start off, I usually open up about sort of 6:45, and then everyone will come in dribs and drabs, and then by about sort of 7:05, everyone's had a chance to have a bit chat, and it's almost like a real garden club in that sense. And at that point I'll introduce the speaker and I'll start the recording, and then during the talk you know you've got the little chat button, so I'll be getting a list of questions coming in, and I'll coordinate it in the sense that I will introduce the person asking the question, and they can then come on and chat to the speaker themselves.
As well as Adventures in Horticulture, I'd also recommend looking at the Gardens Trust in London and Plant Heritage, who also run very good live online talks. And looking further afield, Rachel from the YouTube channel Gardening at Douentza in Ireland, a lovely gardening channel that also has some really good information on houseplants, has a bit of advice of what to go for in terms of Irish online garden talks.
I've been asked today to talk about online gardening talks and what is available in Ireland. And I suppose the most important thing is to check out the RHSI website. So this is the Royal Horticultural Society of Ireland, and on there they have a programme of talks going forth through the year, and these are on Zoom. This group also manages a list of Irish lecturers, Irish speakers, gardening speakers like myself, and they have been very active in updating that list to indicate who can offer talks on Zoom. Anyone can contact the group and be given this list with details of speakers and the lectures they offer.
Meanwhile, over in the United States, I know that a lot of you really enjoy watching Erin of the Impatient Gardener's videos. She's particularly good on dahlias, but she's also great on all things gardening. And she's got some great advice for us in terms of online talks. She told me that the New York Botanic Gardens have an excellent series of online lectures, and they do. I've signed up for them now, as well as some free lectures that you can download and also slightly more expensive gardening courses. There are also 3 other organisations that are doing good talks. Some are free, some are paid for, some are live and some are not. And those are gardendesign.com, Fine Gardening and Longwood Gardens. And I've put links to all of those in the description below. If you'd like some more practical tips on gardening, such as on weeding or no-dig, no-till, then there's a playlist of practical gardening tips at the end of this video, and do let me know if there's anything particular you'd like me to make a gardening video on this year. And if you'd like more tips, ideas and inspiration, then do subscribe to the Middlesized Garden YouTube channel. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.